Hey, welcome to another episode on Dopamine Dialogues. My guest today, Lynda Williams, is a force to be reckoned with. When you reached out, I think your admin team reached out to me, or your assistant found Dopamine Dialogues, and I found your story to be so powerful in terms of transformation and also very paralleled to my story. Um, Going through similar traumas, if I can call it traumas in our lifetimes, surviving, suicide of a close family member, going through a divorce, but coming through that and, creating your own space in the world or purpose to give back to other women, based on your own healing journey, which I find so incredibly powerful. So Linda is the founder and creator of the Evolved Woman Method, amongst many things. I think, Linda, you'll tell us more about the work that you do as well today. And just your journey, leaving a high-end, lucrative 9 to 5 corporate career to start your own, work and purpose, and just the alignment with which you are now living in, and also then finding your true love, throughout it all. So welcome and thank you for
Thank you,
reaching.
Karika.
It's really good to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to get dive in and talk about all these helpful topics for your audience.
So let's start. I'm always interested in upbringing because I find that, it creates such a template, and there's so many layers to our personalities, and a lot of it is, in those formative years, that stick with us and, affect how we show up later on in life. And sometimes you don't even realize the impact of that until much later. Um, so I'd like to just explore a bit about your upbringing, how um, how you found yourself to fit in the world, your feminine, your masculine, your just everything you can share really about childhood and growing up, and Linda.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had quite a humble upbringing. I grew up on a farm near to where I live now, actually. I've come back to my roots after 20 years of
Wow.
living in cities and traveling the world. But I grew up on a farm, and it was very much a working family. We were taught what hard work really was, getting up very early in the morning to help with the herd the sheep and the
Oh,
cattle before
wow.
school. Um, I didn't know what fashion was until I was 15. I looked like a boy. I was in amongst all the farm laborers and guys. But it was very much a wholesome upbringing. We didn't have shiny toys. Um, my mum now looks back and says, "Oh, I never took you out that much." But, you know, I was left to play on my own, and that's where my creativity came from. I got bored, and I think boredom is actually really important for children these days. They're overstimulated, and that's a whole other topic. But, I was left on my own a lot, aside to helping out with the family business. It was quite a creative environment, playing outside with my friends, inside the house, um, and making good money and pocket money through helping out on the farm as well. So I was always taught the value of money. Um, and my mum really brought me up. My father, we know now, but back then we didn't know these things about mental health, but he had mental health issues based on how he was brought up, and that came out in him as a father and also as a husband. And my mum waited a long time to divorce my father, and she did so when I'd finished my A levels. And unfortunately, once the divorce was finalized, he went out, got drunk, was pulled over by the police, and said, "You're way over the limit and you're never going to drive for at least 2 or 3 years." And he said, "I'm going to go home and top myself." And that's exactly what he did. I'd been at university for 6 weeks, and my brother came to get me along with my godmother, and it was a huge trauma and very difficult time because when you lose someone to suicide, there's a lot of unanswered questions about the whys, about there's no final words with them. There's so many unanswered questions that you have to live with for the rest of your life. The way that they left things as well um, was also really messy, and some of the things that we had to deal with over the coming years. So it was a really traumatic experience, and it was just that time in my life where I thought, well, I'm not going to let it define me. I didn't want it to let it define me. And I decided to just to throw myself into continuing my degree and doing exactly and making all my dreams come true, essentially. So I learned how to scuba dive, to ski, to horse ride. I traveled the world. I went backpacking. I ended up working for the most beautiful hotel groups in the world in London and Singapore. I set up my own PR agency which was hugely successful. So I fueled that trauma into doing exactly what I wanted to achieve in my life. So, when you have trauma, it can either drag you down or you can sometimes fuel it for the greater good.
Would you say, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, because you dove straight into um, success and work and working hard and doing all these things that you love. And I found, or I am realizing now that in my younger years, that's what I did. I dove into academics, straight A student, head girl, all the titles. And it was a way to distract myself actually from feeling like I didn't belong. And also, it was a form of validation for me because I felt ugly growing up. I had these like Coke bottle glasses, and I was not the typical girl that guys would ask out. So I dove into, yeah, becoming a success in other ways. Would you
So
say
interesting.
that, doing that was a way of distracting yourself as well from the pain of losing your dad?
Yeah, I mean, we really have had parallel lives, Tarika, because um, I looked like a boy until I was
Yeah.
about 16.
As
Um, the boys always wanted to hang out with me because I was fun, I was funny. The reason why I was funny because I was always trying to lighten the atmosphere at home. So everyone says I have a really strong sense of humor, my energy when I walk in the room, but that actually came from my childhood, from lightening the load when my father was in a really bad mood, or I could sense when he was going to explode. So I'd always be the joker. So the guys at school always wanted to hang out with me, but they never wanted to date me. So yeah, my self-worth wasn't great. I had horrible names shouted at me because I didn't know what fashion was. I had the worst haircuts ever. In my quest to try and look better, I had no idea what I was doing. But there was mean girls on the playground as well. The boys didn't fancy me. So yes, there was that sense of validation, which can be attached to achievement and success. And I was also head girl of the school as well. Um, and I think what I actually find in my Evolve Woman program, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is high achieving women, are, the majority of them have low self-worth because they look to external validation for
right.
self-worth. So their careers, their promotions, their revenue streams. So it's all external validation, as you were just talking about, not actually, I am enough. As an innate human being, I am enough just as the way I am. So we have to do a lot of work on that. So that's quite typical of people that's been through trauma as well, is looking for external validation to make you yourself feel more than.
How do you, or how did you overcome that. And I guess we never really overcome that. I mean, now that I'm in a space where I'm in the third month into starting my own business. So I really admire that you recognize that you needed to do this a while ago already. And this just dawned on me recently. And I've just started my own business. And what I'm finding I'm being forced to do is sit in my healing around this because the validation is no longer there, like the acknowledgement from colleagues, from my boss, the interaction, in the workplace. And I find that I was in, performance a lot of the time at work as well. So and it's so beautiful that you say that because what I'm understanding now is I don't need to perform or put out to prove my worth. I can just be, if I'm having a day where I just need to rest, I'm worthy of that. And that's something I'm starting to learn. So you mentioned the Evolved Woman program. Um, is this one of the aspects of that you help coach women into? Tell us a bit about that and how that came about, that insight.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Evolve Woman program, it's a product of me. And, and actually, I realized there were so many other women out there just like me. And there's a big module in the program where we work on self-worth. And you have to go backwards for the self-awareness, and really look at the moments in your life where you felt that you were less than. What were those moments in your childhood, in your teenage years, growing up, past relationships, past work experience, and looking at those and making sense of them and going, yeah, no wonder I felt the way I did then. And most of the time it's the other party saying or giving unhelpful advice, unhelpful thoughts. It's their own insecurities projected onto you as to why your self-worth was battered down in that moment in time, right? So going back and understanding all these little nuances that kind of build up to your self-worth being less than. So a lot of I always say self-awareness is the greatest thing that you can ever give yourself, is understanding yourself wholly and also being compassionate with yourself as well.
Mm.
Like, wow, you did the best that you could in those situations when the shit was flying. Um, and being caring and compassionate to yourself, but also being curious in terms of how you're feeling, why you feel the way you do, and looking at specific patterns in your life, in your past relationships to really make sense of them and going, okay, that's okay. I understand why. And it's almost putting that to rest so you can start to evolve and build on that self-worth and explore yourself and like looking at your human qualities and what you offer to the world. Um, so that's where we start with self-worth is
Okay.
the first step really is that the self-awareness and understanding our past and why our self-worth is less than.
And how do you how do these women find you? How do you find them? Or do you find that vibrationally you just attract the right client?
Yeah, it's through different referrals. I get a lot of referrals. Obviously, good old social media and my podcast. It comes from different channels, obviously, and you're right. Your vibe attracts your tribe, that good old saying. So it does come from different channels. I always have discovery calls with my clients to make sure that they understand what they're getting themselves into because it's a huge transformation that does need commitment and work. Um, and it's extremely unique in terms of what I've created because ultimately we're looking at finding the love of your life, but there's actually a lot of inner work that we do to begin with to really prepare that beautiful foundation to have a meaningful and deep connection.
You spoke about relationships now a couple of times, and I want to take you back to your marriage. And at what point in your life were you at that time? And um, what informed the choice of masculine you invited into your world, to commit to marriage, and how did that then pan out and play out in your own evolution?
Yeah, I think, well, I met my ex-husband when I was very young. I was straight out of university. I think I'd just turned 22. And bear in mind, it was only 4 years after my father had passed. Um, and I think when you're really young, you don't really know what love truly is. You think you know. And when you're young as well, you just think, it's the go to university, get a job, get married, have kids, yada, yada, yada. Um, and he was a nice guy. He wasn't a bad guy. That was the thing. Um, we had lots in common. We loved to travel. We had some similarities in, we were adventurous. We loved to ski. We loved to hike, scuba dive, all that good stuff. Um, but I was just clueless about the deep and intimate and real gritty necessities that you need in a fulfilling relationship. And I was with him overall for 11 years. A few of those years I was married. And we evolve as human beings and you start learning more about yourself. And obviously, after my father died, I've always had a huge interest in mental health. And so I would, read and study in my personal time. Concurrently, I was working for hotel groups that had a big wellness vertical, which I started getting involved in and understanding more. So all these things were colliding into really understanding who I was and what I wanted in life. And the relationship was void of intimacy, which I found really tough. And we ended up just being flatmates at the end of the day. And I wanted more. I wanted more than that. I desperately tried to make it work. And obviously, when your partner doesn't want to get intimate, that affects your self-worth as well. And it was going on for years, and I wanted to see a marriage counselor. Um, and I did everything I could. But yeah, that affected my self-worth as well. And I realized in my early 30s, going back, that my father's suicide and being in a, a intimate, well, a lack of intimacy in a marriage, I realized that had impacted my self-worth massively. So, which I found out later into my 30s. But yeah, I set up my PR agency and I left my marriage in the same year because I was desperately unhappy. It was weighing me down. I was miserable and I had to do something about it. And it's easier, I guess, to leave a relationship when it's like concrete. He's being abusive, he's cheated on me,
Yeah.
yada, yada, yada. I just didn't have that deep connection to him that I really craved. So yeah, that's what happened with my marriage.
Would you say that he was a safe choice? Because I know from my experience as well, my ex-husband, he reminded me a lot of my father in that I felt safe with him. And after the divorce, it was the biggest thing for me is this feeling of being uprooted and unsafe and not having him hold space. And I then started realizing that that sense of safety again comes from within. It comes from your own self-worth. Um, and I didn't realize I was looking for it outside of myself all the time. And it was when my father passed as well that I really had to go into that wound and understand why I wasn't feeling safe within me. Because suddenly all the masculines had gone. I mentioned when we first met that my brothers as well passed by suicide. So it felt like all this abandonment.
Yeah.
It was just highlighting to me how my own self-worth was informing where I looked for safety. Is that something you also found for yourself or that you build into the evolved woman method?
Yeah, I think, yeah, going back to your earlier question, I probably did choose my husband, my ex-husband. My father was quite volatile, and my ex was very safe. Um, would never say boo to a goose. So he was probably felt quite safe and stable for me, which is what I needed at that time.
Mm.
Um, But absolutely, in the Evolve Woman program, we build on the self-worth. Build on in the confidence. I am enough. I am worthy. And a lot of these women are extremely competent. They're extremely independent at work, but it's their personal life that they have perhaps not had enough time for to do the inner work, to understand themselves more and to understand what they really want in life and what they really want in a partnership. So we put all those building blocks together by looking at our past, understanding it, why we chose certain relationships, the attachment styles, why we put up with bad behavior, manipulative behavior for longer than we should. And we were okay when we put that to bed, and then we start building what is it that we really want in life, how to spot the good, the bad, and the ugly so they don't get into the same situation. Into emotionally unavailable relationships again, how to communicate, how to show up, how to create healthy boundaries, how to communicate your needs and wants early on in a relationship. Because let's face it, a lot of my women are in their 40s and 50s. And when you get to this stage in life, it's, we don't have 3 or 4 years just to mess around and have fun and giggles. Well, if that's what you want, then fine. But if you're looking for a deep and meaningful relationship, we get very specific on exactly what you will and you won't compromise on. And then everything else just falls away. And eventually you'll find an amazing guy and you'll be surprised by who they are and how they show up, because when all the nonsense is put to one side and you really focus on what is important in life, everything just falls to the wayside and makes way for what really is right for you.
What was dating like for you after divorce? Because for me, I mean, it took me years before I even had the courage to dip my toe into the dating pool again. And it was awful. I mean, but to your point, I didn't know what it is that I wanted. I'm now in a space where, I'm not actively looking for a relationship. I think I'm just discovering more about myself. And I guess that's when you then, attract in the right individual. But what was dating like for you? Sorry, I asked 100 questions in one. Let's just go back to that. How did you find dating after divorce?
Well, I was so naive, first of all. Obviously, when I met my husband, there was no dating apps. Um, to begin with, I found it exciting. And because I didn't feel attractive, my ex-husband didn't make me feel wanted. I didn't feel, revered. My self-worth was pretty low. And I was like, oh my God, people fancy me. So I found it quite exciting to begin with. But then I was like, wow, it's a wild world out there. And that's when you start understanding that there's a lot of men out there that just, hey, want the one night stands. There's a lot of narcissists out there. And then you start learning about personality disorders and um, the way that narcissism shows up. And I know that's a heavily thrown around word that's overused. Um, but it was a wild world, and I dated some really emotionally unavailable and emotionally immature men. I
Mm.
got my heart broken a couple of times because I just believed the best in everyone. I thought everyone was a good person 15 years ago. And I had a rude awakening with it all, which led me to do more inner work and understand. And all my friends were like, oh my God, why is she dating this guy? He's an absolute arsehole to her. Why is she staying with him? And they were just like, oh my God, what is going on here? And then I started doing so much work and understanding that I was always heart led. So we make decisions with our head brain, heart brain, and gut brain. So I was always heart led. So I understood more about decision making and then using our gut intuition. I understood more about what I really wanted, my values, what I really wanted in a deeply authentic, fulfilling relationship. Um, and yeah, I had to do the work because my dating life, quite frankly, was an utter disaster.
And I find that it's a reflection of where we are at, the people that we bring into our space. Because you mentioned emotionally unavailable, and I have had that pattern as well in relationships. And I realized it was myself, actually. I was unavailable to me emotionally. So it was kind of a safe choice because I did not have to be too vulnerable. And it was the self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, if they are emotionally unavailable, I don't have to expect too much, so I won't be that disappointed. And then also as an empath, I can relate to that because, an empath is actually, or empathy is actually almost a trauma response to, this hyper awareness, hypersensitivity that you have, especially if you've had a volatile upbringing, is you become attuned to, as you said, changes in energy, and you train yourself to be able to assess that. And what I
Yeah,
find is, as empaths, we draw in the narcissistic type of personality because it's almost like it's a reflection of that wound that needs to be healed and worked on.
yeah, no, absolutely. And it's also tagged to self-worth as well. So it's a mirror of what your relationships are a mirror of your standards and what you're willing to accept. Um, and putting up with really bad behavior for months on end, that's a reflection of you and what you feel you are worthy of at the end of the day. I mean, if you're not standing up and putting boundaries in place, and putting up with bad behavior, that then it's a mirror of your own standards and self-worth.
Mhm. How did you eventually, and you mentioned, you then started doing the inner work and listening to the gut brain, your intuition, and approaching things from a different perspective. How did your current partner then come into your world?
Yeah, I had to do a lot of unpacking, and I got very specific on what I really wanted in a partnership. And after all the experiences I've been through, and I dated quite a few guys before I met my partner, like a lot of first dates and stuff. But I was extremely specific on what I wanted, and I think a lot of people get carried away of by what they think is expected of them by
Mm,
family, by friends, by society, by their communities. And I see this coming up with my clients as well. Oh, I need an interesting guy who has great conversation to bring to business dinners with me. These are the types of things that come up. And they're not looking at the inherent qualities and values that you need for an honest, deep, fulfilling relationship. And we're talking about, for me, my values were kindness,
mm,
loyalty, trust, family values, a sense of humor, um, important in innate human values like that. I wasn't bothered about what he did at work. Um, all I was bothered about was his innate human values, and I focused on that. And also, you've got to see eye to eye on your maps of the world and what you like to talk about, what your interests are, and actually some of the time it's good for them to overlap, but also it's healthy to have your own interests and hobbies that you do outside of the relationship because that's really important to add value to the relationship when you come back together. Um, but my partner, yeah, he's a big hiker like me. So we and he's a big foodie like me. We love to cook together. So we do have some interests and hobbies that we love doing together. He's an extremely genuine, honest, very, very thoughtful and caring guy. And he ticked all of the boxes. And I knew they always say, and this is quite a funny thing to share actually. I was cautiously optimistic with my partner when I met him. I wasn't the old me that went all in. Oh my God, he's amazing. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's the
I
one.
yeah, all the one. I mean, all that BS. I was quietly and cautiously optimistic. But the proof's in the pudding, you've got to let things pan out. But when I met him, his energy was just such a breath of fresh air. No BS, no big peacock showing off. He was who he was. He's raw and honest and real. And that real honesty and authenticity came across immediately, and I immediately picked up on that vibe. Um, and our first date was on a hike in the Yorkshire Dales. And the way he was, the way he was caring throughout that hike started to show and unravel who he was on date one. And of course, many dates have to go by for you to understand if they're the one for you or not. But interestingly, my mum knew he was right for me before she'd even met him. And she'd go around, oh, she's met the one. I'm like, Mum, calm down. Will you stop telling people this? Like my cleaner would show up, oh, I've heard you met the one. I'm like, what? I'm like, Mum, will you stop telling everyone this? It's embarrassing. You're putting so much pressure on me. But she picked up on my energy. Like, I'm very close to my mum, and my energy was very different with John than it was to my previous partners. I was very calm. I was happy. I was in this really balanced state. I wasn't in this crazy energy. And she picked up on that. And I only really knew 2 or 3 months in that he was right for me because I was just letting it unravel. He was showing all the signs that he was right for me. But I let it take the course and not jump in with 2 feet like I used to with previous relationships. Um, so having a bit of a slow burn sometimes is really important because I always say actions speak louder than words. Like let them prove themselves, and you're also proving yourself as well. But I think I shared that his father passed away recently, and you really see someone when a crisis happens, when trauma happens, when shit hits the fan, whether it's at work or in your personal life, you really see how someone shows up
Mhm.
when they're in that vulnerable, raw state. And it showed to me yet again what an amazing, caring, thoughtful human being he is. Even though he was hurting inside, he was still looking after everyone else, me, his mum, um, funeral arrangements, all the rest of it. And it just reinforced, wow, what an amazing guy he is. So you have to let early relationships take their course. And I'm not saying hold back too much, but just look after that heart of yours in those early months until you've been on a holiday with them, until you've gone through a crisis or some traumatic experiences. And I'm wanting that to happen to you, but you really see how people show up when um when things
Shut
arise that are
down.
uncomfortable that you have to face head on in your personal or your work life.
It's interesting that you said that your mom picked up on your energy because I find, and this is where the gut brain intuition comes in, because your nervous system tells you almost immediately. And I used to ignore that because I so desperately wanted love. And my ex had moved on, and I was like, why am I not finding the one? And there were a couple of men after that that were the one, and I just ignored my nervous system. And I was like realizing, after a while, why am I feeling drained after an interaction? Or why am I feeling Why do I have heart palpitations? Or why can't I just ease into my energy? And I found myself in performance again, but it was my default. Like now I can see it from the outside looking in, because I've had experiences where my nervous system, instead of bracing, it blooms, when you're with the right energy.
Yeah.
So that was that what you would say your mom was picking up on? Your nervous system was just at ease with John.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. Your body knows the score. Um, Even with when it comes to friendships as well, and who
Exactly.
really fills your cup and nurtures you. Um, and my mum was absolutely picking up on that. She was seeing that I was calm and content. I wasn't over talking about him or begging him up all the time because I didn't need to. I didn't need to go, oh, he does this and he did that and he did the other. I was just uber content and calm, and you also realize when you're with the right person, we joke that you actually can get sleepy around them because you're so calm. You're so calm with them when you see them. Like, but you because your nervous system is so at ease with them, and you're so calm, and especially when you've had a hectic day at work and you like snuggle up on the couch, when you're with the right person, when you can doze off with them, when you feel super, super relaxed with them. So just understanding your body and how it's reacting in certain situations is your sixth sense. And a lot of us don't tap into our sixth sense enough, our gut brain. And what a lot of people don't realize is that our gut has neurons in it, like our brain does. Not as many, but it has a heck of a lot down there. And that is sending signals to our brain as well. And quite often it's understanding whether you're heart led, head led, or gut led when it comes to making decisions and understanding the landscape around us. So when you understand that and you understand how to sync those three brains, that's when you can make more powerful decisions in your work life and also your personal life. See, I used to get into trouble because I was always heart led in my past relationships. Oh, it's not their fault they're late again. Oh, it's not. Oh, they're just so busy. That's why they've forgotten. Oh, well, yeah. Always making up excuses for them because my heart was like, oh, but he's a nice guy, really. He's a nice guy. Yeah. And my head would be like, "What's up, girl? Like he's stood you up three times now. He's made these more bullshit excuses up." And my gut's like, "Bleh, bleh, bleh." But my heart was overriding it, going, "Oh, but he's a nice guy, really. He didn't mean to be like that." So, oh, he sent you flowers the other day. I mean, see, he's a nice guy. So I was really heart led. And once you start syncing those three brains and making sense of situations, and the gut never lies. Like I would say to people who have had a lot of trauma and they're not necessarily trusting their gut anymore, is to start journaling just everyday things. Um, and it could be anything when you first meet new acquaintances in the local gym or making decisions at work or business transactions, just noting down how you felt.
Yeah.
And then you can look back and my gut was right. My gut was right then. And that building that confidence and just boosting that gut intuition where you may feel that you can't rely on it because you felt it let you down before, whereas it's probably because you just weren't tapping into it in the right way.
Yeah.
So there's exercises that we can do to strengthen that gut intuition, and journaling and looking back is one of them.
And there's science behind it. I mean, the vagus nerve, connects all of those brains. The heart itself has 60,000, if I'm not mistaken, neural networks as
Yeah,
well. So, um, I love that alignment. And it is alignment because that's exactly what you're feeling when something feels off is it's not resonating or it's in misalignment, and usually it never ends up working. You can try and force it, and that for me is always the clue. When you go into force mode or chase mode
yeah,
and you feel like you like it's hard work.
yeah.
And there's no ease and there's no flow, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it should flow. And when you meet somebody, it's your head going, hey, and this is how you think it. Your head's going, hey, is he all the things that I want? My key values, are our visions in line? Tick, tick, tick. Yeah, head. And then the emotional side, can I deeply connect with this guy? Like, how do I feel about him? Can I intimately connect with him on a level? And the gut is like, does this feel safe and right? Does this feel safe and right? And if there's something off there, making your head work with your gut to go, okay, let's explore. Why is my gut feeling a bit off here? And making sense of that. Sometimes, and we have to be careful, sometimes when we've had bad experiences
Yeah,
before, and there you may be triggered by something. And sometimes your gut can be
yeah.
off based on past experiences, and that's why your head has to come in and make sense of it.
I
So
love
it's all
that.
about syncing them, if that makes sense, with your head, with your gut, with your heart. Can I deeply emotionally connect with this guy? Do I feel safe to with the with what the gut is saying? And my head is looking at, okay, is this what I really want based on my values, my inherent beliefs, my visions? And that's how you can work with the three brains to make the right choices in life.
I love that you mentioned triggers because that does come from past experience and past trauma, and then you end up projecting it sometimes onto an innocent person. So yeah, it is important to connect the gut and the brain and understand, okay, where is this anxiety coming from? Is it real? Is it imagined? Is it a projection? Is it 100%? So if we go back to the evolved woman method, if I was a client, just for the listeners out there, if they wanted to approach you and go into this with you, what is the progression or what is the sequence that you would then take to help a woman like me,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we always start off with a discovery call, of course, so they can understand me. And then we start off with a one-on-one coaching call that really deep dives into the program so know exactly how to show up and what to do week on week. And the three traits that I see with the women that have the most success out of the program is they're coachable. So they show up. They may have seen therapists or done some inner work before. Most people have done a little bit of inner work. They're smart women. They have explored themselves and they may have seen therapy to an extent, but
Mhm.
they show up and they're ready to be coached. They're resourceful. So they're ready to make changes. That they will do what it takes throughout the program to make the healthy changes for themselves. And that the third thing is being decisive, like showing up and making a decision on actually this unhelpful thinking that I've been carrying around for the last 25 years. It's time to let that go and deciding there and then to let it go. So you're really showing up committed to the program. Um, and then throughout the weeks, so we really start off with the self-awareness chapter on weeks 1 and weeks 2, and it's starting to really look at, okay, where are we at now with our emotional, physical, and mental health? Um, Looking at our past experiences, and we're all a product of experience, but really looking at that in depth to really take it by the balls and look at, okay, that's who I am, and I understand the way I am and the way I've been, and our triggers and our attachment styles and our love languages, and why we might have stayed around in some relationships longer than we should have done. So really look at that in its entity on weeks 1 and weeks 2. Then we're starting to looking at where we've come from, and now we're looking the evolution, looking into the future. So we're looking at, okay, as we talked about before, building our self-worth and self-confidence. What does that look like, and how do we go around that? So that comes around from specific frameworks and exercises I do throughout the program, as well as the group coaching calls that I have every week. And then they have access to me 24/7 outside of the group coaching. But that's when we start doing the inner work of building ourselves. Um, and then we look at this beautiful dance of the masculine and feminine. One of my favorite modules. Quite often, high achieving women are in the masculine mode all the time. So it's like go,
Mhm.
go, go, go. So masculine is more the proactive, the strategy, the future pacing, the making the decisions, the on mode. Whereas the feminine is more being in the flow, being receptive, being present, the creativity, and that allowing into your life. So when you're always on, you can't be in your feminine, you can't be in the present. It's actually healthy to have a balance of both. So being in your feminine, being more still, being more present, like listening is a feminine trait. Listening with empathy is a feminine trait because you're still and you're in the moment. And ways to get into your feminine energy more are would be creativity, but it can be very basic things like community, being with like-minded girlfriends who fill your cup up, being in the present, having nourishing conversations. And it can be simple things of coming to your senses. So going for a walk in nature, opening your eyes, smelling the roses, literally, feeling the wind on your skin, but just taking a breath and being in that present moment and allowing and receiving. And there's a lot of noise out there about what femininity is and it isn't. And it's not about being submissive. It's not about lessening your power or diminishing your incredible accomplishments and achievements, but it's just understanding how to flow between the two because, the yin and the yang, the masculine attracts the feminine and vice versa. And we do need to have that balance to have a nurturing relationship because that's opposites attract and that's how you flow in a meaningful relationship. But like my partner, he sees me at work, like I'm on now and I'm chatting. I'm also in my feminine when I'm listening to you and understanding and responding, right? So I'm still flowing. People think you're either in your masculine or you're in your feminine, but actually you can flow all the time and understanding that dance. But he sees me in work mode. He's like, oh wow. But he sees me in a very feminine state after hours. In a calmer state, in a more present state, in a more flowing state. But you still need to have masculine after work. Otherwise, you'll never get anything done because you need to make a decision. What are you going to have for your dinner tonight? What we're doing at the weekend? You need to make those decisions where your masculine comes in. So it's understanding it's a flow and it's a dance. It's not a, hey, I'm masculine at work and then I'm feminine after work. It's that beautiful dance in between. So we have a huge chunk of the program is on the feminine and masculine, which I love and I love chatting about. Obviously, I'll just yabber on about that. And then we also get very, very specific on what you want in a relationship. And people think they know what they want. But when we do some values elicitations and frameworks and look at exactly what that relationship looks like to you and why, it all becomes clear and it becomes clear of what you were and you weren't attracting before. So we really start building that foundation and then we start putting a little strategy in place in terms of what how we're going to get my clients out there to find the love of their life. And yes, there's online methods, but it's also opening your horizons to meeting the love of your life in other ways as well, which actually can go hand in hand with what we develop in weeks 1 and weeks 2, doing more of what fills your cup, your hobbies, your interests. And quite often you can meet the partner doing what you love most when your cup is full and you're full of energy because, whether that's playing tennis or hiking or cooking or an art class, you see what I'm saying? So it's just opening yourself up. But I also teach women to enjoy being single. And I think there's this thing out there that, oh, I love being single. I don't need a man. I've just got my girlfriends. And you daren't say that you're open to a relationship because there's a shame around that. Oh, she's single and lonely and desperate. But actually, those two can work hand in hand. You can be really happy when you're single and enjoying single life for all of its positives. But you can also open your heart and want a meaningful relationship one day. And those two can work hand in hand.
And coexist. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So we look at all of that. We look at making women feel just amazing and the best version of themselves. So it's inevitable that they're going to find somebody. And I don't have a genie going, hey, here he is. But it's going to happen when you are the best version of yourself, when your self-confidence and your self-worth and you're filling your cup with all the good stuff, it's inevitable that you are going to attract a like-minded partner. So that's what we work on the program. Obviously, I'm an ex-public relations girl, so there's a big chapter on communication. I think two of the key things in life is self-awareness and communication. So we really delve into how to communicate, like how to communicate on a date and show up, like in those early stages of dating, how to communicate what your values, wants, and needs are. So when I met my partner, I was very transparent that I wanted to have a child one day. And there's a way of saying that without scaring them, going, hey, yeah, clock's ticking, I'm going to be wanting a child in the next 12 months. But it's a way of saying, hey, I want to have a child at some point in the next few years. If that's not on your agenda, no worries at all. I just don't want to waste your time. And I want to free up space for the right person to come into your life. So it's saying it in the right way. And so having the same vision and wants and needs and trajectory in your life is really important because what's the point in dating someone for 6 months when you want completely different things in life? So I teach the art of communication and values and boundaries and needs in those early days. And so that really empowers women again to show up with confidence. So they're in the driving seat, not the person that they're dating. They are in the driving seat and they're in control of their happiness and their worth. So that's how the program evolves. And eventually, towards the end of the program, my ladies are going out on amazing dates with guys that are much closer to their ideal man. Sometimes they meet them in the early days of the program. Sometimes it's months after. But they are in the best possible space to meet the love of their life because they've done their work. They understand themselves. They know what they need and want in life, and they know what a healthy relationship should look like. Because sometimes we're second guessing ourselves, as we were saying before, with our gut brain, head brain, and heart brain. Is that behavior acceptable? So we understand what all these terms are: the narcissism, the gaslighting, the love bombing, all these thrown around words. What is manipulation? What does emotional abuse look like? We explore all of that so you know what is right and wrong, and you know how to tap into that gut when things feel off, and you're not second guessing yourself, and you're not like looking at your phone at 1 a.m. going, what did that text message mean? And screenshotting it to 3 girlfriends for them to try and figure it out. Because you've done all the work and you really, really understand.
I'm laughing because I've done that.
Oh,
Uh,
haven't we all? Haven't we all?
Analyzed, overthink,
What does he really mean? Does
what
he
does
mean
that
he's
emoji
really
mean? Googling, like, what does this mean from a
yeah. Oh, let's get on ChatGPT, see what ChatGPT says. Yeah. When you're with someone who is right, you will
don't
not
have
be
to.
wondering what
Yeah.
things mean. Like with my current partner, I never ever wonder what he means. Does he have an ulterior motive? Is he really into me? Like, I 100% know we are both in it to win it. Like, we are 100% there for each other. And it's never been clearer. And you know when it's right is when you're not second guessing, your gut's not churning. You're like, oh, what's going on here? It just flows. And you do just know when it's right.
Mm. When you said the masculine feminine, it's also one of my favorite topics to explore. And it's almost breaking down that superwoman archetype, that hyper independence, which I had as well. I mean, I chose engineering as a career and then went into a very male-dominated environment. And many of my friends don't believe me because, to them, I'm more feminine, but I was in masculine energy all the time. And after my divorce, it's like, I can do this. I can hold a drill. I can keep this house together. And it was only a couple of years after that that I was like, I don't want to. I can, but I would prefer not to. And I started being okay with saying, I want, that masculine energy outside of myself as well, to hold space sometimes, to
Yeah.
fix, the broken door or whatever. I don't want to have to do that all on my own. And it's
Yeah.
healthy to say that, you don't have to be single and have it all together. And it's just this template I think that we had. to overcompensate, to force our way into a masculine world, really. And
Yeah,
it's undoing that again.
absolutely. We've had to. It's a man's world out there. Let's face it, this world was built by men. So we've had to show up in masculine energy in all our high-powered jobs. We've become hyper independent, but the beauty in a partnership is a partnership. Like you're both in it together, you're both contributing in your own way in a relationship, and you find your roles eventually. And how amazing is it to have someone to help you with stuff like, oh, you're exhausted trying to do everything in life, but when you have a partner that can, hey, babe, let me take the ease the load here. What I was listening to Brené Brown again the other day, and she has this practice with her husband, and they get in from work, and they're like, "Well, I've got about 30% today. What have you got? 50%. Okay, let me take the load tonight." But what a beautiful way and open communication when you get in from a hard day at work, and someone's got more bandwidth and energy than the other, and the other kind of compensates for the person that's running on a low battery. So it's a partnership at the end of the day, and you need that yin and yang. You need that support on both sides. But you're right, it's allowing, and quite often when you become hyper independent because you
Mm,
had to. So for me, when I left my ex-husband, and I didn't have much money coming in, I had to be independent. I had to keep my shit together to create a successful business. Singapore was extremely expensive, so I had to keep going. And then you get used to being in that mode all the
Singapore.
time.
Were you
And
living there?
sorry,
Were you living in Singapore?
yeah, I was living in Singapore at the time, which is one of the most expensive cities. I think it is the most expensive city in the world. So I had to be on all the time. And then you get used to that being on, which leads to burnout. So
Mm.
it's not healthy to be in masculine mode. I had two burnouts. And when we're in masculine too much, it leads to burnouts. Like it's kind of science when you look at it. Your cortisol levels are through the roof, your adrenaline's through the roof because you're always on go mode. I mean, people seem to talk about all these things in little boxes, but they're all connected. So if you're in masculine mode 24/7, you're going to be burnt out and like, you know, unhealthy. So it's actually healthy to have that balance. But yeah, when it's a beautiful thing when you allow yourself to receive, and it's
Yes.
okay to ask for help and to receive help. Um, and that's the beauty in fulfilling beautiful relationships is when you're flowing and you're supporting each other when one person needs it more than the other. That's when you step up.
What's next for Lynda Williams?
Well, my podcast, PS I Love Me, I've
Oh,
got
I
a
love that. I love that title. It took me a minute, and then I was like, that is so clever because we're signing PS I love you, right?
yeah,
The PS I
absolutely.
love
And it's
me.
all yeah, it's all about supporting women and making them feel better about themselves in the wild world of trying to have it all, career success, ambition, and having a loving, nurturing personal life. So I've got a really good episode coming out this week actually on sexual shame and intimacy, which is fascinating with an expert sexologist. So I'm excited to get that out. I am continuing to build on my Evolve Woman program, and I'm going to start my book towards the end of the year,
Wow.
which is exciting, but also a mammoth task. Everyone's having books written by AI these days, but I was listening to Simon Sinek about how you just don't get well, for your sense of self, the cathartic sense of telling a story. So that kind of personal satisfaction of telling the story from the bottom of your heart, but you don't get those nuances and the true sense of a story and the emotion and the power of healing and trauma and um, how we evolve through life. And I won't be writing it by AI. It'll be back to basics. So it will take a little while, but that's next for me towards the end of the year.
That sounds amazing. And You're okay with me putting your details in the description box if anyone wants to reach out or is interested in.
Absolutely. Anyone wants to chat about the Evolve Woman program, you can arrange to have a chat with me online because I work online predominantly with all my programs and coaching. So just click on the link onto my website and you can book to have a chat with me.
Any closing words of advice?
Closing words of advice would be kind to yourself. Be
Hmm,
kind to yourself. Everyone's going through a journey, and I would always say be kind and compassionate to yourself.
100%. And comparison is the worst thing that you can do because we are at different spaces in our journeys, and it's just honoring that.
Yeah. And give yourself space as well. We're always in a rush to get stuff done, but give yourself time and space and grace when you're on your journey. Um, but yeah, I think kindness and compassion, I would say right now it is key to the world that we're navigating at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for joining me today
Thank
and
you for having me and asking such interesting questions.
the honest, vulnerable conversation. I love that. And for the listeners, please, share your comments with us. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what's next for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anyone wants to follow me on Instagram, it's Lynda Williams Coach. There's always really interesting tips on there. And there's more information on my Evolve Woman program. And so you can get in touch via that page as well.
I'll put that down in the description as well. Thank you
Perfect.
so much and
Thanks, Eureka.
take
Take
care.
care.
Cheers.